In Kettering, in East England, on August 27, 2021, a police unit answered a call to check on a private residence. The parents of a young woman reported their daughter had not answered her phone and he had been unreachable for about a day. The night before, her friends had tried to contact her as well, to no avail. When officers arrived at the address, everything appeared calm on the surface. The gate was closed, a car stood in the driveway, the front door was locked from inside. But as soon as the officers stepped inside, the scene told the full scale of the tragedy. On the kitchen floor lay a man with a deep wound to his neck. Upstairs, in the bedroom, was the young woman. Neither required medical aid. Maddie Durden Hollamby was born on April 21, 1999, in the small village of Weblington in the county of Cambridgeshire. Her childhood was spent in a tight-knit family circle with her parents, Steve and Rachel, and younger brother Fabian. In the village, everyone knew each other, and local events like school fairs and dance nights were part of everyday life. From an early age, Maddie stood out for her discipline, her thoughtful manner toward others, and her ever-present smile. Dance became her first serious passion. She competed in contests across the UK, honed every movement, never missed a rehearsal. Teachers said she had a rare combination of persistence and ease in social interaction, qualities that later served her well in her work. After school, Maddie chose a career in marketing. She began at Halo Mass Group, where her father was the head of the department. Colleagues recalled that she settled in quickly, proposed new ideas, and wasn't afraid to take responsibility. Maddie was not naive. She knew exactly what she wanted. For her family, she remained a pillar, polite, mature beyond her years, and internally strong. That was how everyone knew her, until the moment her name first appeared in the news in connection with very different events. When Maddie joined Halo Mass Group, the marketing department was already being overseen by Benjamin Green, a man who was both respected and feared at the company. At that time, he was 42 years old, from Yorkshire with a solid track record, influential contacts, and a charisma not often seen in the corporate world. His presence in the office was unmistakable. He spoke with confidence, made an impression, inspired trust. Benjamin graduated from the University of Manchester, where he studied communications and management. He built his career quickly. By the early 2000s, he held a senior leadership role and was considered a specialist capable of advancing any project. On the surface, a successful professional, a charismatic leader, a role model for his subordinates. But behind the facade of confidence lay a personal history far from smooth. He had been married for about 10 years and had 3 children. He lived in Liverpool. The marriage ended in divorce in 2007. Officially, the cause was differences, but unofficially, his ongoing infidelities. People around him knew him as someone who didn't accept limitations and took refusal badly. Even while married, he maintained relationships with younger women. Among acquaintances and former partners, the same traits came up again and again: charm, generosity, attention, until things ran on his terms. But the moment a woman showed any independence, he turned into someone else: caustic, demanding, belittling. People around them chalked it up to typical male temperament, or work stress. But what hid beneath was something far deeper: a pathological need for control. Benjamin built relationships on dominance. He was a master of first impressions, knew how to win you over and how to make you trust him. But his interest quickly morphed into a drive to subdue. In the professional world, especially among women colleagues, this was quietly known. Newcomers were warned, often in whispers, to watch their backs. He was talked about, not named, yet the tone carried clear caution. When a young, talented, ambitious employee named Maddie Durden Hollamby joined the marketing team, Benjamin zeroed in on her. The 20-year age gap didn't deter him. It was, in his mind, an advantage. He knew the formulas: how to flatter, how to establish a connection, how to make himself indispensable. To Maddie, he appeared as a respected leader, a source of career experience. To Benjamin, she became his next target, proof of his power. In that blend of confidence, high status, charisma, and drive to dominate, the seeds of tragedy were planted. At that time, no one could have predicted that beneath the polished veneer lay a deeply entrenched destructive pattern of behavior. Their relationship started in late 2019. At work, they projected the image of a flawless couple, always in control. Despite her efforts to keep distance, Maddie found herself increasingly reliant on his approval. Benjamin outwardly showed concern, but behind that concern was a tightening grip on her life. What began as interest became a means of control. In spring of 2021, Maddie received an offer to join Keyline Company, a chance for independent career growth. Her decision to change jobs became a turning point in their relationship. For her, it was a step forward. For him, it was a blow to his ego. From that moment, their relationship shifted. He lost control for the first time, and she began to wake up to her desire for freedom. After Maddie moved to the new company, the boundaries between work and personal life began to blur. Although Benjamin was no longer her boss, he acted as though he still had the right to dictate every aspect of her life. The first signs of pressure appeared in small ways. He asked where she had lunch, who she talked to, why she didn't answer right away. Gradually, those questions became interrogations. Benjamin began checking her phone. At first, under a pretext, "Let me see a photo," or "Make a call from your phone." Later, openly, without permission. He read through her messages, browsed her email, checked her call logs. Any contact she had with a man triggered suspicion. Maddie tried to object, but every time it ended in an outburst of anger. Witnesses stated he didn't hesitate to create scenes even in public places. One friend recalled how in a cafe, Benjamin snatched her phone right out of her hand when she received a message from a coworker. In restaurants and bars, he would raise his voice, accusing her of disrespect, of not paying enough attention. To those around them, it looked like an awkward argument. To her, it was repeated humiliation. Maddie's friends tried to talk to her, but she excused his behavior as just a tough time or work stress, which is a common response from people subjected to abuse. In reality, it had become more than just arguments. It was a control system, where any resistance on her part met with pressure and accusations. Her family noticed the changes too. Steve Durdant Hollamby, Maddie's father, said plainly that this man was not right for his daughter. He warned, the relationship is unhealthy, and if she doesn't stop now, it will end badly. But Maddie, confident in her abilities, replied that she would handle it on her own, that no one would ever control her. At this stage, the cycle began that psychologists call the abuse cycle, alternating between aggression, apologies, and false reconciliation. After another jealous outburst, Benjamin would give presents, say he was afraid of losing her, that his jealousy stemmed only from love. She accepted the apologies, hoping things would change, but each new explosion became stronger and the peace periods got shorter. Control gradually invaded every area of her life. He wanted to know when she left the house, where she was, who she was with. He'd call video to check that she was alone. Maddie was getting exhausted by constant vigilance, but she still hoped she could fix things. Her belief that she could handle it was now working against her. It gave Benjamin more room to escalate pressure. From the outside, their relationship still might have looked ordinary, if tense. But inside, there was already a clear pattern forming. Control, outburst, remorse, truce, and the loop begins again. The longer it went on, the less of the confident young woman remained, the one who once believed she had everything under control. By summer 2021, despite the emotional pressure in the relationship, Maddie had continued to grow professionally. Her income increased, and she began thinking about buying her own home. She even ran a mortgage simulation in her bank's app, a normal step for someone planning long-term. But that step turned into a point of no return. When Benjamin saw the simulation on her phone, he took it as a betrayal. His reaction was immediate and aggressive. He demanded explanations. Why she was doing this without him, why she hadn't told him first. In his view, such decisions should be made together. He proposed buying a home jointly, taking out a loan in both their names, living as a family. Maddie refused. She calmly explained that the house was her goal, that she wanted to achieve it independently. The sentence, "This is my project," didn't just offend him, it triggered rage. For someone used to control, her independence felt like a challenge. That was his first open refusal he couldn't suppress. After that, they had a heavy conversation that quickly escalated into a fight. Benjamin accused her of selfishness, claimed she was pulling away, acting cold and ungrateful. When Maddie tried to defuse the conflict, he shifted tactics, telling her she was not herself, that she was imagining problems, that she ought to see a doctor. This is classic gaslighting, manipulation where the abuser makes the victim doubt their own sanity. In the days that followed, he acted as though nothing had happened, texting, suggesting they meet, saying he loved her. But the tension didn't vanish. For the first time, Maddie seriously began asking herself if she should continue the relationship. She brought it up with friends, the same friends who had warned her about his behavior earlier. Her girlfriends later recalled that this was the moment when her confidence in having it all under control finally cracked. She admitted in conversation that she was tired of constant checks and pressure, that she felt less free and more like she was being watched. She no longer tried to justify his jealousy or rudeness. Maddie wanted to cut the ties, but she didn't yet know how to do so without triggering another wave of aggression. She was not physically scared of him. She simply knew that any move to distance herself would result in accusations, tears, and renewed attempts to bring her back under his control. In her circle, this episode, the one involving the house, would later be called the first moment she stopped being in his frame of reference. To Benjamin, her refusal was not just a disagreement, it was a symbol of loss of power. And, for her, it was the first step toward the decision that would someday return her freedom, though in the end, it would cost her life. After the fight over the house, things between Maddie and Benjamin became increasingly tense, though outwardly they still looked stable. During this period, he announced that his own home needed repairs and that he temporarily had nowhere to live. Unexpectedly, he asked a request, to stay for a few weeks at Maddie's family home. For her father, Steve Durdant Hollamby, the situation was deeply uncomfortable. Benjamin had been his boss at the company, Halo Mask Group, and a refusal might bring professional complications. Despite his reservations, Steve agreed, hoping it would be only a brief stay. So the man he already distrusted became a guest under their roof. The 5 weeks Benjamin spent with them proved a trial for everyone. He behaved impeccably, extremely courteous, obliging, offering help with every minor task. He complimented Steve on his professionalism, even mentioned a potential promotion. He joked at dinner, helped set the table, drove Maddie's mother, Rachel, to errands. Rachel, unaware of the couple's internal conflicts, saw him differently. In her eyes, he was polite, kind, attentive. She told her daughter he might just be overly emotional, but otherwise, a good man. The contrast with what Steve sensed behind the facade was stark. Steve felt the falseness. He was unsettled by the over-helpful behavior, as if every gesture was calibrated to earn trust. He noticed how Benjamin's gaze lingered on Maddie's phone, how he eavesdropped on her conversations, asked questions inappropriate for a typical guest. After dinners, Steve directly told his daughter that it was time to end the relationship before things went too far. Maddie responded calmly. She understood everything, she'd soon handle it herself. Her confidence appeared genuine. She didn't want drama, at home or at work, especially since Benjamin was still her former supervisor and her father's colleague. She decided the breakup talk should happen later, in a neutral setting, without involving the family. While she postponed the decision, Benjamin strengthened his hold. His presence in the home became a constant reminder that he was there, observing, analyzing, waiting. On the surface, it was a quiet few weeks, with no open conflict, but the tension was everywhere. When the renovation on his place was finally finished, Benjamin packed up and left, thanking the family for their hospitality. Rachel recalled that the farewell seemed warm and friendly. Steve, however, felt a deep sense of relief. But he also knew the problem wasn't over. Deep down, he felt their story wasn't finished, and that the perfect guest had left behind something unsettling, something that would soon come to light. Maddie, as before, believed she could end things peacefully, without drama, without consequences. August 2021. By then, Maddie and Benjamin's relationship existed more out of habit than real connection. Every word had the potential to spark a conflict, and their arguments had long since lost any sense of logic or respect. One evening, while they were watching the reality show Love Island, Maddie made an offhand comment about one of the contestants being attractive. To Benjamin, that was enough to ignite another scene. He accused her of being disrespectful, of flirting through the screen. After that, they didn't speak for several days. When Maddie tried to reach out, he replied in a cold, distant tone, making her feel as if she was the one who had caused the problem. But the real outburst came later, when he learned she was planning a family vacation to Jamaica. This time, he didn't just act offended. He lost control. Within a short span, Benjamin sent dozens of messages accusing Maddie of betrayal and deceit. He wrote that she was manipulating him, that she was destroying their relationship, that he was being used and discarded. The messages came one after another, relentless, increasingly hostile. For Maddie, that was the final confirmation that things had gone too far. She understood that continuing this relationship was no longer safe. On August 25th, she met with her two close friends, Hebe and Harley. They met at a small bar not far from her home. The conversation was calm but heavy with concern. Her friends knew what she had been dealing with and understood that ending it was now unavoidable. Hebe suggested sending a message and ending things from a distance to avoid confrontation. Harley insisted she involve her father, worried about her safety. But Maddie refused both options. She said an adult should be able to handle their own problems. Her decision was firm. She would go to him and end it face to face, calmly and finally. She didn't want to appear weak, didn't want anyone to intervene on her behalf, but deep down, she knew there was risk. The next day, before leaving her home, she sent a message to her friends at 5:51 p.m. "If you don't hear from me in an hour, call." That was the last message ever sent from her phone. After that, all communication stopped. Her friends waited for a reply, texting, calling, but no response came. As evening fell, they realized Maddie had been out of contact far too long. At first, no one wanted to imagine the worst. Maybe the talk had taken longer than expected. Maybe things had just gotten complicated. But as the hours passed, her screen stayed dark, and so did the hope that everything was fine. The night of August 26th, 2021. Maddie's phone stayed silent. Her friends Hebe and Harley sent dozens of messages and tried calling her again and again, but there was no response. At first, they tried to convince themselves that the conversation had just gone longer than expected, that she'd be home later that night. But as every minute passed, their unease grew stronger. By midnight, they knew something was wrong. The problem was, neither of them knew Benjamin's exact address. He lived somewhere in the suburbs of Kettering, but Maddie had never said where exactly. They searched through their contacts, found his phone number, and tried calling. No answer. The silence on the other end was chilling. The next morning, August 27th, Hebe decided to call Maddie's mother, Rachel Durdant Hollamby. She told her that Maddie hadn't come home and still wasn't answering. Rachel immediately called her husband. Steve, who was already on the road, decided to drive straight to the office, the same one where Benjamin worked. He hoped Benjamin would know where Maddie was, or maybe she was there with him. But when he arrived, the office was empty. At around 1:30 p.m., local police received a call asking for a welfare check at a home in Kettering. When officers arrived, everything looked calm from the outside. A car was parked in the driveway, the door locked from the inside. But as soon as they stepped in, it became clear. There was nothing left to save. In the kitchen, they found a man's body. It was Benjamin Green. Investigators determined that he had taken his own life. There was a deep wound to his neck, a knife nearby, and several shallow cuts on his arms, the kind often seen before a final, fatal act. Upstairs, in the bedroom, was Maddie. She was lying near the bed, her phone beside her. The screen cracked. There were traces of blood on the floor and a fallen lamp, but no signs of a violent struggle. Everything pointed to a sudden, brief attack. Forensic experts later confirmed the cause: 4 stab wounds, 3 to her shoulder and 1 fatal wound to the chest, directly to the heart. Afterward, Benjamin most likely stayed in the house alone. He didn't attempt to clean the scene or call for help. Within minutes, he used the same knife to end his own life. As investigators pieced the timeline together, one thing became clear. This wasn't an accident or a momentary loss of temper. It was a deliberate act by someone who couldn't accept losing control. The home Maddie entered that day, intending to end the relationship, became the place from which neither of them would return. Detectives and forensic teams began their work immediately after arriving. The house was examined in detail, and early results ruled out outside involvement. Every door and window was locked from the inside, and there were no signs of forced entry. On the floor, only minimal traces of a struggle, not the kind consistent with an attack by a third party. On Maddie's wrist, her smartwatch was still recording data that would later prove crucial. According to experts, the device registered a sudden spike in her heart rate at 5:56 p.m., followed by a complete stop at 5:58. That narrow 2-minute window matched exactly the time her friend's messages stopped receiving any reply. The autopsy of Benjamin Green revealed a small amount of alcohol in his system, something investigators believed might have lowered his self-control, but not enough to impair his ability to act deliberately. The weapon, a kitchen knife, was found next to him. No foreign DNA was discovered anywhere in the house. Based on the evidence gathered, authorities confirmed the official version of events: a crime followed by Benjamin taking his own life. The motive? Maddie's decision to end the relationship and Benjamin's inability to accept the loss of control. Psychologists brought into the case pointed out a well-known pattern often seen in similar incidents: what they call the "if not mine, then no one's" syndrome. It describes people with controlling or narcissistic traits who interpret a breakup not as the end of a relationship, but as a personal humiliation. For individuals like this, losing a partner feels like losing a part of themselves. Experts emphasized in their report that Benjamin's actions didn't appear impulsive, they were deliberate. His behavior in the final weeks, the pressure, the accusations, the manipulation, fit the classic pattern of escalating control that ultimately led to aggression. By the time investigators completed the collection of evidence, there was no doubt left. The tragedy inside that Kettering home was the result of obsession, a need to possess, not to love. In July 2022, the investigation into the tragic death of Maddie Durdant Hollamby was officially closed. Senior coroner Ann Pember confirmed the final determination. Maddie was the victim of a relationship-based crime, a case of what is legally recognized as femicide, an act driven by jealousy and the desire for control. The coroner's findings established that Benjamin Green took Maddie's life before ending his own. During the hearing, both families gave statements. Benjamin's relatives described the event as a moment of breakdown, insisting he was not a man prone to aggression. Maddie's parents, holding back tears, spoke of their daughter as the light and joy of their home, someone who truly believed in kindness and fairness. After the hearing, the case drew wide attention in British media. It was described as a stark example of hidden abuse that can exist even in relationships that appear stable from the outside. Psychologists stressed how control is often disguised as care. and jealousy is mistaken for love. Maddie's story became a heartbreaking reminder that when one person seeks power over another in a relationship, the outcome is always tragic and always preventable.